NBA players who hooked up with their teammates' wives. What if I told you some NBA teams didn't fall apart because of injuries or bad coaching, but because of one forbidden relationship behind the scenes? In the league, there's an unspoken rule. Every player knows you never cross the line with a teammate's wife or partner. But these scandals prove that even champions can betray the brotherhood. And when that happens, the damage spreads fast. Broken marriages, fractured locker rooms, and careers that never look the same again. If you're ready for the most shocking NBA betrayals ever told, hit like, subscribe, and stay locked in. Legends of Black Excellence starts right now. Shaq's alleged affair scandal. One betrayal can hit harder than a championship loss. Shaquille O'Neal was the definition of NBA dominance, 4 titles, larger-than-life confidence, and a personality so bright it filled every room he walked into. To fans, Shaq wasn't just a superstar. He was an era. And alongside him, Shawnee O'Neal helped shape the image of a power couple built to survive fame pressure and constant attention. From the outside, it looked like they had the kind of family foundation that fame couldn't shake until the cracks became impossible to ignore. As Shaq's spotlight grew bigger, so did the rumors surrounding his private life. Whispers about infidelity followed him for years, but the real shock came when Shawnee accused him of repeatedly crossing boundaries, turning private pain into a public storm. The situation exploded into headlines, commentary, and endless debate, especially after reports and online chatter began linking Shaq to Laura Govan, the longtime partner of NBA guard Gilbert Arenas and the mother of his children. Laura denied the claims, but the story spread fast because it carried the one label that can poison any locker room, a teammate's partner being involved. If the whole world is watching, how do you even know what's real anymore? For Shawnee, this wasn't about gossip. It was about respect, trust, and the emotional cost of being publicly embarrassed. Filing for divorce wasn't just a legal move, it became a statement that she wouldn't keep protecting a marriage she felt was being disrespected. And for Gilbert Arenas, even being attached to the rumor created its own pressure. Whether he spoke out or stayed silent, fans still treated his name like part of the scandal, turning his personal life into a trending topic. In the NBA, distractions don't just stay at home. They walk into practice, sit in the locker room, and follow players onto the court. In the end, the alleged Shaq-Laura situation became one of those stories that never fully disappears because it represents something bigger than one relationship, the collapse of trust under fame. Shaq's legacy as a basketball giant is permanent, but this chapter added a complicated footnote to his image, proof that greatness doesn't erase consequences. Shawnee, meanwhile, emerged as more than the wife in the story. She became the one who chose dignity over denial. And Laura and Arenas were left carrying the weight of a rumor powerful enough to damage reputations even without confirmation. That's the frightening truth about celebrity scandals. Sometimes the accusation becomes the legacy, even when the facts stay unclear. Paul George and Hibbert's wife rumor. It wasn't a missed shot that broke the Pacers. It was what happened behind closed doors. In the early 2010s, Indiana looked like a team built the old-school way, defense-first, tough-minded, and united by a shared hunger to dethrone the league's biggest powers. Paul George was rising into stardom as the face of the franchise, while Roy Hibbert anchored the paint like a wall, giving Indiana the size and discipline that made opponents uncomfortable. For fans, this group felt different, less flashy, more serious, like a team that could actually go the distance. Then the whispers started. During a stretch when every win mattered, rumors spread that Paul George had crossed a line with Eva Turner, the wife of teammate Roy Hibbert. The story carried the kind of betrayal that can't be fixed with a timeout or a team meeting. In a locker room, trust is oxygen. Once it disappears, everything feels heavier. Even without confirmed proof, the damage came from what teammates believed, what people suspected, and what the noise did to everyone's focus. The Pacers weren't just playing opponents anymore, they were battling tension in their own circle. If your teammate becomes your enemy at home, how can you ever play free on the court? The alleged fallout didn't stay quiet. It reportedly created fractures that showed up in body language, chemistry, and confidence. Roy Hibbert, once dependable, entered one of the most frustrating stretches of his career, with fans watching his impact shrink when the lights got bright. Meanwhile, Paul George, the young superstar with the world in front of him, faced a different kind of pressure, one where the scoreboard couldn't protect his name. And in the middle of it all was the emotional chaos that teams rarely admit: publicly embarrassment, anger, and people taking sides without ever saying the words out loud. That's where Lance Stephenson enters the story, because every team has a spark, and Lance was gasoline. Reports claimed Stephenson confronted Hibbert over the drama, and tensions supposedly boiled over until Eva Turner got involved, directly escalating the situation into something physical. Whether every detail played out exactly like fans imagined, the point was clear: the Pacers were no longer one voice. Once a team starts looking sideways at each other, playoff pressure doesn't just expose flaws, it magnifies them. What should have been a championship climb began to feel like a slow collapse. In the end, the Pacers' downfall became a painful lesson in how fragile momentum can be. Talent didn't vanish overnight, but unity did. And when a team's foundation cracks, even a season full of promise can turn into a what-if story. Paul George moved forward and rebuilt his career elsewhere, while Hibbert's prime faded faster than anyone predicted. For Indiana fans, this rumor still stings because it suggests the Pacers didn't lose to another team, they lost to distrust. Paul George's strip club controversy. Sometimes the biggest threat to a young star isn't a defender, it's temptation. Paul George entered the league with the look of a future franchise legend: smooth athleticism, quiet confidence, and a game that kept expanding every season. By the early 2010s, he wasn't just Indiana's guy, he was becoming one of the NBA's most respected two-way wings. Fans saw a player who could lead a team deep into the playoffs, a polished face of the new generation. But when fame rises fast, the spotlight doesn't just follow your jump shot, it follows your choices. Not long before the Pacers' alleged locker room chaos became tabloid fuel, another rumor chain began circling Paul George's name, one tied to nightlife parties and a controversial pregnancy story. Reports and online chatter claimed he had gotten a Miami stripper pregnant, and the situation grew louder because it played into a familiar narrative: the young athlete who has everything yet can't resist a reckless moment. Whether every detail spread online was fully accurate or not, the reputation hit was real. In today's celebrity culture, people don't wait for paperwork, they judge off headlines and screenshots. And once that image sticks, it starts coloring everything a player does. When you're winning on the court, do people celebrate you, or just wait for you to slip up? That question matters because Paul George's next relationship storyline pushed the drama into even more dangerous territory. He was reportedly dating Callie Rivers, the daughter of legendary NBA coach Doc Rivers. That alone carried weight because dating a coach's daughter isn't just romance. It's politics. It's locker room energy. It's tension that can follow you into practices, meetings, and team dinners. Callie wasn't just any celebrity girlfriend. She was tied to an NBA power figure, which made Paul George's personal life feel like it could affect his professional world in ways most players never experience. This is where the narrative shifted from young star making mistakes to young star risking relationships that could reshape his future. Doc Rivers was known for leadership and discipline, a respected coach with deep influence in the league. Even the idea of disappointing someone like that, whether through cheating rumors or messy decisions, could make a player look careless. And while the NBA rewards talent, it also remembers drama. Fans may forgive, but teams calculate risk. Sponsors notice patterns. Teammates question judgment. When someone's private decisions create loud distractions, the league starts treating them differently. In the long run, Paul George rebuilt his career and kept proving his value as an elite player, but these controversies became part of the early chapter people still bring up when they talk about him. It's a reminder that greatness isn't only measured by points and awards, it's measured by how you handle the freedom that comes with fame. Because in the NBA, one scandal might be a mistake, but multiple headlines start looking like a warning sign. Andrew Bynum's coach-fiancé rumor. Some scandals don't explode with proof, they spread with silence. Andrew Bynum once looked like the Lakers' next great big man, a champion at a young age, massive potential, and the kind of physical tools teams dream of building around. At his peak, he wasn't just another center, he was a franchise investment, a player who could shift the balance of a series with size alone. But by the time he arrived in Cleveland, that promise felt fragile. Injuries, inconsistency, and questions about focus had already started rewriting his story before he ever stepped into the Cavs' locker room. Cleveland hoped Bynum would be a stabilizer, someone who could provide toughness in the paint and experience under pressure. Instead, his stint became short, messy, and filled with whispers. The Cavaliers suspended him for conduct detrimental to the team, and while official details stayed limited, the suspension fueled speculation that something bigger was happening behind the scenes. Then came the rumor that turned a struggling season into a tabloid topic, claims that Bynum had been involved with Christina Anderson, the fiancée of Cavaliers assistant coach Jamal Mosley. No receipts went public and Christina stayed quiet, but the story didn't need confirmation to become the kind of conversation people repeat like it's fact. If a team denies it publicly, does that make it false? Or just inconvenient? That's the tension that made this rumor linger. Cavs officials reportedly dismissed the claim as untrue, but once a player's reputation is already shaky, the public tends to assume the worst. Bynum's career at that point wasn't defined by highlight reels anymore. It was defined by what went wrong. So when fans heard a story involving a coach's household, it felt like the ultimate professional disrespect. It suggested a player so disconnected from consequences that he couldn't even recognize the human boundary between athlete and staff. What makes this situation so toxic, whether proven or not, is the power dynamic it implies. An assistant coach isn't just a coworker. He's part of the backbone of a team. If trust between players and staff fractures, the entire organization feels it. And even though Jamal Mosley continued his coaching rise afterward, rumors like this leave a shadow because they turn private relationships into locker room tension. For Christina Anderson, the silence became its own storyline, because when someone doesn't speak, the internet fills in the blanks with its loudest assumptions. In the end, Bynum's Cleveland chapter became another example of how quickly a career can slide when credibility disappears. He played only a limited stretch there and never regained the status he once had. And that's what made this rumor stick. It didn't feel like a random scandal, it felt like part of a pattern of self-sabotage. Whether the story was true or exaggerated, the impact was the same. Andrew Bynum went from future cornerstone to what could have been, and sometimes that fall happens faster than any injury. Tony Parker's teammate wife allegation. A single text message can destroy what trophies never could. Tony Parker wasn't just a point guard, he was the engine of the San Antonio Spurs dynasty, the smooth closer in late-game moments, and one of the most respected winners of his era. In the public eye, his life looked almost cinematic: championship rings, global fame, and a glamorous marriage to actress Eva Longoria, one of the brightest stars on television at the time. Together, they felt like the perfect blend of sports royalty and Hollywood shine, clean, powerful, and untouchable. Then came the crash. In late 2010, Eva Longoria filed for divorce, and the story immediately turned into a media wildfire. Reports circulated that she had discovered hundreds of intimate text messages between Tony Parker and Erin Barry, the wife of Spurs teammate Brent Barry. The alleged betrayal felt extra brutal because it wasn't just cheating, it was the kind of rumor that cuts through a locker room like broken glass. Erin denied having an affair, and Tony never publicly confirmed the full details. But the timeline spoke loudly enough. Eva and Tony's marriage ended, and soon after, Brent and Erin's marriage also fell apart. For fans, it looked like one scandal had cracked two households at once. If your teammate helped you win championships, How do you justify crossing that line? That question is why this story still stings. Brent Barry wasn't a random name. He was part of the Spurs culture, a respected veteran who shared real seasons and real battles with Parker. San Antonio wasn't known for drama. It was known for discipline, quiet professionalism, and unity. So when this rumor hit the public, it felt like a stain on the one franchise that seemed immune to chaos. Even more shocking was the reaction from Brent's father, NBA legend Rick Barry, who reportedly viewed the situation as the breaking point that ended the marriage. It wasn't just personal, it became generational embarrassment. For Eva Longoria, the divorce became a defining moment in her public narrative. She didn't just leave quietly. She walked away from a marriage that, according to reports, had become emotionally unbearable. And in a culture where women are often expected to stay strong and smile, Eva's decision read like a statement: success means nothing if respect is missing. Meanwhile, Tony Parker's reputation took a hit that even his titles couldn't fully block. He remained a champion, but now his story had a messy chapter that followed him into every interview, every highlight clip, every discussion about his legacy. In the end, this wasn't just a celebrity breakup, it was a warning about how easily private decisions can collapse public greatness. Parker's on-court legacy is still elite, but this scandal became part of the conversation whether people want it there or not. Because some mistakes don't fade with time. They echo through friendships, families, and the history of a team. Derek Fisher vs. Matt Barnes, explosion. Some betrayals don't happen during the marriage, they happen after it ends. Derek Fisher built a reputation as one of the NBA's steadiest winners, calm under pressure, trusted by superstars, and remembered for clutch moments when the season was on the line. He wasn't flashy, but he was dependable. The kind of veteran teammates respected because he handled business without noise. Matt Barnes, on the other hand, carried a different energy, tough, raw, outspoken, a player who wore his emotions like a uniform. Both men knew the meaning of loyalty in a locker room. That's why what happened next didn't feel like ordinary dating drama. It felt like a collision of pride and principle. The story centers around Gloria Govan Barnes' ex-wife and the mother of his twins. Their relationship had already been public, messy, and emotional long before Fisher's name entered the picture. By the time Barnes and Gloria separated, the divorce wasn't just a private breakup. It was a headline with custody tensions and constant scrutiny. Then, years after Fisher and Barnes had shared NBA circles and Lakers history reports surfaced that Fisher was dating Gloria. Technically, the marriage was over, but in Barnes's mind, the line still existed. It wasn't about legality. It was about respect. And once that feeling is violated, logic doesn't matter anymore. When the ring is off, does the loyalty still count? That question is exactly why the situation exploded the way it did. In October 2015, multiple major sports outlets reported that Matt Barnes drove a long distance to confront Fisher at Gloria's home, jumped a fence, and a physical altercation followed. Suddenly, it wasn't just gossip, it was real-world fury. A former teammate wasn't being talked about. He was being punched. Barnes later spoke publicly about the confrontation, describing a moment that was fueled by emotion, shock, and a sense of being disrespected in the most personal way possible. Fisher, known for keeping his composure, was now at the center of a storm he likely never expected. What made the fallout even deeper was that the drama didn't end with one fight. Reports described custody disputes and court involvement in the aftermath, turning the situation into a long-running conflict that affected more than just egos. It affected children's stability and mental peace. Over time, however, the story took an unexpected turn. Barnes eventually expressed that he reached a more mature place, focusing on what mattered most, his kids feeling safe and comfortable. And the relationship between Fisher and Gloria didn't fade out, it grew stronger. In 2021, Derek Fisher and Gloria Govan got married, proving that this wasn't a short scandal. It was a real commitment. The legacy of this situation became one of the NBA's most infamous post-divorce betrayals, not because someone broke the law, but because they broke an unwritten code. It's the reminder that sometimes the most explosive battles aren't played in arenas. They happen in driveways, behind gates, and inside people's hearts. Steve Nash's paternity chaos. Sometimes the loudest NBA scandal has nothing to do with basketball. Steve Nash built his name on elegance, two-time MVP, a floor general who made teammates better, and a leader who played with control instead of chaos. He was the kind of star fans trusted not just for his skill, but for his image, calm, intelligent, and seemingly far removed from tabloid madness. That's why the shock hit harder when his private life suddenly became a headline people couldn't stop dissecting. During his years in Phoenix, Nash's personal world began facing strain, and by the early 2010s, rumors started circling that his marriage to Alejandra Amaral was crumbling. But the story didn't become a wildfire until gossip sites and sports conversations began fixating on one detail that felt explosive. Alejandra gave birth to a child, and online speculation claimed the baby looked like he might not be Nash's biologically. The rumor machine did what it always does. People ignored dignity, ignored family, and treated a child's existence like a scandal puzzle. Suddenly, the conversation wasn't about Nash's jump shot or leadership. It was about paternity. Then came the most dangerous part, the names. Because Nash wasn't just surrounded by teammates, he was surrounded by teammates people could easily drag into the story. Rumors began suggesting that one of his former Phoenix Suns teammates, Leandro Barbosa, might be the father. Later, attention shifted toward Jason Richardson, another Suns player who shared time with Nash. There was never any confirmed proof, no official statement validating those accusations, but the scandal grew anyway. In the NBA world, that kind of rumor is nuclear, not only because it attacks a marriage, but because it threatens locker room trust and destroys reputations with pure suggestion. How do you defend your family when the internet has already chosen a villain? That's the emotional center of this chapter. Alejandra Amaral publicly pushed back against the speculation, defending her family and making it clear that the baby was planned and that Nash had always been a loving father. She also insisted the separation had nothing to do with paternity rumors. But once something like this is released into public conversation, denial doesn't always stop it, it sometimes feeds it. Fans kept connecting trades, timing, and personal changes to the rumor as if basketball transactions were clues in a courtroom drama. The aftermath left scars, even if nothing was proven. Nash moved forward later, marrying Layla Frederick, and rebuilt a more private life away from constant noise. Yet this story stayed alive because it combined every ingredient: gossip, love's betrayal, mystery, and the humiliation of a man known for calm respectability. For Barbosa and Richardson, it's a reminder of how quickly you can be pulled into someone else's storm without evidence. And for Nash, it became one of the strangest footnotes in NBA culture, proof that even the most disciplined superstar can't control what the world decides to believe. Delonte West and LeBron's mom rumor. One rumor can poison a season faster than any injury. Delonte West was never the biggest star in the NBA, but he was the kind of player championship teams keep close, tough, fearless, and willing to do the gritty work that doesn't show up in commercials. In Cleveland, he wasn't expected to carry the franchise. That role belonged to LeBron James, the chosen one, the hometown hero, the superstar carrying an entire city on his back. The Cavaliers were chasing a title, and on paper they had everything: talent, momentum, and a leader entering his prime. But in 2010, the team's story took a turn that sounded too wild to be real, yet impossible to ignore. The rumor that exploded across sports media and fan culture claimed Delonte West had been involved with Gloria James, LeBron's mother. It wasn't just gossip, it was the kind of accusation that attacks the foundation of a locker room. A teammate crossing into a superstar's family life is the ultimate betrayal, and once that rumor took hold, it didn't matter how many points anyone scored. People began looking for signs everywhere: cold body language, awkward bench moments, and the Cavaliers' sudden loss of rhythm. When Cleveland suffered a shocking playoff exit that year, Fans didn't just blame defense or matchups. They blamed the rumor as if scandal itself had entered the arena. If you heard that about your own mother, could you ever focus on basketball again? That's why this story became legendary, even without proof. LeBron never publicly addressed it in detail, which only fueled speculation. Silence can be interpreted in too many ways: pain, strategy, disbelief, or simply refusing to give oxygen to something ugly. Meanwhile, Delonte West consistently denied the accusation, and over the years he repeated the same message: it never happened. But denial doesn't erase a viral narrative. Instead, the rumor followed him like a shadow, turning into the first question people asked wherever he went. West later admitted it affected him everywhere, like a stain he couldn't wash off no matter what he said. Former NBA player John Salley added another layer by suggesting LeBron avoided discussing it publicly because addressing it would only make things worse. That explanation made sense to many fans, because some rumors don't deserve debate, they deserve silence. But the internet doesn't run on restraint. It runs on shock value. And in 2023, a clip of Delonte West once again publicly denying the story went viral, proving this wasn't just a moment from 2010, it was an NBA myth that refused to die. The fact that the rumor resurfaced more than a decade later shows how long scandal can outlive reality. The aftermath is tragic in a different way. LeBron's legacy survived and expanded into greatness, but that Cleveland chapter remains haunted by what-if questions. And Delonte West, who later faced well-documented personal struggles, became the person permanently tied to one of the darkest rumors in league history, whether he deserved it or not. In the NBA, some stories end at the final buzzer. This one never did. Jordan, Pippen, and Madonna triangle. Even dynasties have jealous whispers behind the trophies. Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen weren't just teammates. They were the unstoppable heartbeat of the Chicago Bulls, the duo that turned winning into a global brand. Jordan was the ruthless closer, the face of basketball itself. Pippen was the perfect partner, versatile, defensive-minded, and quietly essential to the machine. Together, they made the 1990s feel like a permanent Bulls highlight reel. But when a team is that powerful, every small tension becomes magnified because everyone is watching for cracks. That's why the rumor involving Madonna still lives in basketball folklore. The story goes that during the Bulls' peak era, Madonna had ties to both Jordan and Pippen at different times, and that she allegedly favored Pippen enough to send a limousine for him, creating a private rivalry that no coach could diagram away. It wasn't about points or minutes. It was about status. Jordan wasn't used to losing anything, especially not attention. And Madonna wasn't just any celebrity, she was the ultimate pop icon, the kind of woman whose presence could turn a private moment into a legend overnight. When you're Michael Jordan, how do you react when someone chooses your teammate over you? That question sits at the center of this story. Former Bulls assistant coach Johnny Bach was mentioned in the transcript as someone who suggested Madonna's preference may have sparked jealousy, feeding a subtle competition between Jordan and Pippen beyond the hardwood. Whether every detail is perfectly accurate or exaggerated by time, the idea fits the era. Fame was intoxicating, temptation was everywhere, and ego was as much a weapon as talent. If Jordan felt challenged, especially in something personal, he didn't just brush it off, he turned it into fuel. And then there's Dennis Rodman, the wild card who made every rumor feel even more believable. Rodman was also linked to Madonna in the 1990s, and he openly told stories that sounded too outrageous for normal life. In the transcript, Rodman recalled Madonna's bold behavior, describing moments where she took over his world with the same fearless energy she brought to her career. His presence in this triangle made the whole situation feel like a celebrity hurricane circling the Bulls at the height of their greatness, proof that even champions were living in chaos behind the scenes. The long-term impact wasn't a ruined season, but it added a darker flavor to the Bulls' mythology, the reminder that Jordan and Pippen's partnership wasn't always perfectly peaceful. Their relationship later showed real public strain over credit, respect, and legacy. And stories like Madonna's become symbolic less about romance, more about ego power, and the invisible battles that happen in the shadows of greatness. Because sometimes the biggest rivalry isn't your opponent, it's the teammate standing right next to you while the world cheers. Nick Young's cheating video leak. One private joke turned into a career-defining disaster. Nick Young was known as Swaggy P for a reason. He played with swagger, talked with confidence, and treated the NBA spotlight like his natural habitat. On the Lakers, he wasn't the franchise savior, but he was a loud personality in a city that loves characters. Off the court, his life looked just as flashy. He was engaged to rapper Iggy Azalea, and the relationship felt like a pop culture headline that mixed sports music and Hollywood energy into one big celebrity moment. To fans, it was entertainment. To Nick, it was his real life on display. But then came the moment that blew everything up without a game being played. Nick Young was caught on video confessing to cheating, and the most brutal twist wasn't what he admitted. It was who recorded it. His teammate D'Angelo Russell reportedly filmed the conversation during what Nick believed was a private joking moment between teammates. When the clip leaked, it hit like an earthquake. The internet didn't debate it quietly. It moved fast, it judged instantly, and it turned Nick into a punchline overnight. The confession wasn't hidden anymore, it was public, permanent, and impossible to outrun. If your teammate secretly records you, is that betrayal worse than the cheating itself? That question split opinions across the league. Some people argued Nick's actions caused the fallout, so he had no right to complain. Others said the locker room is supposed to be sacred, where teammates can speak freely without fearing they're being trapped. Either way, the consequences were immediate. Iggy Azalea ended the engagement, and the relationship collapsed in full view of the public. For Nick Young, it wasn't just heartbreak, it was humiliation on a world stage, the kind that follows you into every arena and every comment section. Inside the Lakers, the damage went deeper. Reports and later interviews suggested Russell faced serious backlash from teammates. In a sport built on trust, on split-second passes and silent communication, being labeled untrustworthy is a nightmare. Russell claimed it was never meant to go public, and described it as something like a private joke that got out of hand. But once trust is broken, explanations sound like excuses. The tension reportedly affected chemistry, and both players eventually moved on from the team, leaving behind a lesson that every locker room understands. Sometimes your biggest opponent is the person sitting right beside you. Nick Young continued his career and later won a championship with Golden State. But this incident became the story people mention first when they talk about him, because in the NBA highlights fade, but a leaked betrayal can live forever. Kobe versus Karl Malone. Controversy. Respect isn't optional when you wear the same jersey. Kobe Bryant lived by an unwritten code: loyalty, discipline, and protecting what mattered most. On the Lakers, he was the unquestioned alpha, intense, demanding, and obsessed with control. Off the court, Kobe's world revolved around family, especially his wife, Vanessa Bryant, who stood beside him through the brightest victories and the darkest storms. That's why the controversy involving Karl Malone didn't feel like a simple misunderstanding. It landed like a personal violation because it wasn't about basketball at all. Karl Malone arrived in Los Angeles in 2003 as a legendary veteran, chasing what he had never won, an NBA ring. Known as the Mailman, Malone had built a Hall of Fame career on toughness and intimidation, the type of player who didn't back down from anyone. On paper, adding Malone to a roster with Kobe and Shaq looked like a championship lock. But behind the scenes, a strange tension was quietly forming. Reports later claimed Malone made an inappropriate remark toward Vanessa during a Lakers game, allegedly responding with a crude line when she joked with him. Even worse, the comment was described as disrespectful and offensive, exactly the kind of thing Kobe wouldn't let slide. If someone disrespects your wife, do you stay calm? Or do you go to war? Kobe chose war. According to accounts in the story, he confronted Malone, directly calling him out for what was said, and making it clear that family was off limits. That confrontation wasn't just teammates arguing, it was the kind of moment that changes the temperature of an entire locker room. Once Kobe felt a boundary had been crossed, trust was finished. Malone reportedly denied having romantic intentions, but also apologized for the offensive remark. The fact that an apology was even needed showed how serious it was. And when the issue became known, the Lakers weren't just dealing with pressure to win, they were dealing with fractured respect between men who were supposed to be united. The controversy didn't stop there. Malone's wife, Kay Malone, was reportedly involved indirectly when she overheard a tense phone call that followed the dispute. That detail matters because it shows how quickly NBA drama spills into families. The team may call it business, but spouses and children feel every shockwave. And for Kobe, this wasn't a headline he wanted, yet it became part of the 2004 Lakers story, a season already heavy with tension, ego, and expectations. Los Angeles reached the finals and lost. And while basketball reasons were the official explanation, fans still remember how messy the chemistry felt. In the end, this incident became one of the clearest reminders that even legendary teams can be undone by personal disrespect. Kobe's legacy stayed intact. If anything, this story reinforced how fiercely he protected his family. Malone, however, left Los Angeles with his reputation bruised and his relationship with the Lakers forever complicated. Because in a franchise built on pride, crossing that kind of line doesn't fade. It scars. Dennis Rodman's mystery betrayal story. Some stories are so wild they sound like fiction until a legend tells them himself. Dennis Rodman has never been the type to live quietly. Even during his playing days, he wasn't just famous for rebounds and defense. He was famous for chaos, contradictions, and the fearless way he treated the spotlight like a stage. Rodman could lock up a superstar one night, then make tabloid headlines the next morning. To fans, he became more than an NBA champion, he became an unpredictable celebrity icon, the kind of man who turned his own life into a never-ending headline. But the most jaw-dropping Rodman tale isn't about basketball at all. Years after his prime, Rodman began telling a story that sounded like the ultimate locker room betrayal. He claimed a teammate allegedly slept with one of his ex-wives, and he still had to face that same teammate in a championship game that very night. He shared versions of the incident in different interviews, including conversations connected to the entertainment world like The Surreal Life, and later revisited the topic in a 2023 interview with DJ Vlad. The twist that kept people hooked was the missing detail: Rodman never revealed the teammate's name. That one silence turned the story into a mystery, and mystery is gasoline for fans. If you can't even trust your teammate with your family, what's left to believe in? That's the emotional punch in Rodman's confession. He described the situation like something he had to swallow, not because it didn't hurt, but because he couldn't change it. The way Rodman told it was almost unsettling, like betrayal was just another strange obstacle to step over on the way to winning. He hinted that the teammate may have been someone who later got cut by coach Chuck Daly, which only added another layer of speculation for Detroit Pistons fans trying to match the story to the timeline. Rodman's personal history made the rumor feel even more believable. He had 3 well-known ex-wives: Annie Bakes, married in 1992, Carmen Electra, a famously chaotic romance in the late 1990s, and Michelle Moyer, later years, children involved. Rodman never confirmed which marriage connected to the betrayal story, but he suggested the timing lined up with the early 1990s, which opened the door for endless theories. He even referenced past talk show moments, including mentions connected to Oprah Winfrey, where Rodman discussed his lifestyle in a way that shocked mainstream audiences. In the end, this story became part of Rodman's legend, not because it was proven in detail, but because it revealed something raw in Rodman's world. Betrayal didn't stop the mission. It just became another chapter. And maybe that's why this mystery still lives, because when Dennis Rodman leaves a name out, fans can't help but fill the blank themselves. In the end, these NBA scandals weren't just tabloid moments, they were warning signs about how fragile greatness can be when trust collapses. Championships are remembered, but so are the choices that divide locker rooms, break families, and stain reputations long after the final buzzer. For legends of Black excellence, the real legacy isn't the gossip. It's the lesson loyalty is currency, and once it's spent, you can't buy it back with fame. So here's the debate. Should a player's private betrayal ever be forgiven if it damages the team's brotherhood? Or is that line truly unforgivable?